Tech Time on this Tuesday. Facebook, of course, has been in the spotlight in recent weeks, not in a good way. Now it has plans to scrap one of its more controversial features. The company is saying today it'll end its facial recognition software program. That's the tech that allows it to scan and recognize billions of faces and then make suggestions to users based on those faces that it scans. Tag people in photos, perhaps suggest you could expand your friend circle based on those faces. It is a major reversal, though, for Facebook as it comes under fire for its privacy practices. Let's bring in our techies today. Carmi Levy, Ritesh Kotak, standing by with their view on this. Ritesh, let me start with you on this one because I know you are very familiar with Facebook. Carmi is as well. Your take on what is going on here?
So about time. They've actually come under a lot of scrutiny, as you mentioned, when it comes to their facial recognition program. The most notable was how it was essentially weaponized against the population through applications like Clearview AI. There was this idea around creating creating surveillance and mass surveillance of individuals and privacy violations. So I think it's really important that they're actually taking this step, but it's also important to remember that this doesn't actually mean that they're getting rid of their facial recognition program altogether. They still have their algorithm that has developed over the years. And let's just think about this. Facebook, 2008 is when it started gaining popularity, when people started putting up images. In 2010, they announced their facial recognition algorithm, and now the year is 2021. And it's seen how people have progressed. It has an algorithm and a data set of essentially over 1 billion people around the world, extremely complex stuff, and they're not getting rid of that just yet. So even though there's a moratorium on facial recognition, even though that they're saying that they're taking a step back, in reality, they still own the algorithm, and I think they're still going to come under scrutiny for this.
Here's something weird, Carmi. On Facebook, I think in the last day, I got a suggestion, Facebook memories from 8 years ago, and it was you and me on this panel talking about Facebook. And here we are 8 years later talking about Facebook. So very strange things going on in the algorithm there. Your take on what this means, though?
Well, definitely, Todd. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And Facebook has been wrestling with this for the better part of the last decade, and for much of its history, it's been really riding that edge of what is considered acceptable in terms of privacy. And certainly, with its facial recognition initiative, it's pushed those bounds and gone over that line time and again. It's been sued successfully. It's been fined $5 billion in Europe over this, and again and again and again. And I think the company has finally decided that as they rebrand, focus on their metaverse-based future, it makes sense to throw a few bones to the rest of us who've been criticizing the company, basically trying to make them look like a kinder, gentler company as they transition into this new form. But the reality is, as Ritesh has very precisely indicated, and this was the first thing that jumped out at me, was they simply said they're going to delete the data. They're not stopping facial recognition. Facial rec, of course, is one of the core components of the metaverse, of the technology that they're proposing. So they're still going great guns on this, and I expect we're still going to have run-ins going forward. Saying something now to try to get us to focus on, focus on what they want us to focus on, which is not the lawsuits, not the whistleblower, not all the bad news, but having some good news in there as well. And I don't buy it. We're going to be wrestling 8 years from now. We're going to be talking about facial rec still, and Facebook is still going to be, ear deep in what is essentially a pretty dirty pool. It's not going to change.